word culture is derived from the Latin term cult or cultus, meaning tilling or cultivating or refining and worship. In sum, it means cultivating and refining a thing to such an extent that its end product evokes our admiration and respect. Culture is a way of life. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, the language we speak and the God we worship, all are aspects of culture. In very simple terms, we can say that culture is the embodiment of the way in which we think and do things. Culture is the expression of our nature in our modes of living and thinking. It may be seen in our literature, in religious practices, in recreation and enjoyment. Culture has two distinctive components, namely material and non-material. Material culture consists of objectives that are related to the material aspect of our life, such as our dress, food and household goods. Non-material culture refers to ideas, ideals, thoughts and beliefs. Culture varies from place to place and country to country. Its development is based on the historical process operating in a local, regional or national context. For example, we differ in our ways of greeting others, our clothing, food habits, social and religious customs and practices from the West. In other words, the people of any country are characterized by their distinctive cultural traditions. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, law, custom and any other capability and habits acquired by a man as a member of society. After you have gone through this unit, you would be able to understand the meaning and component of culture, understand the mean of cultural realms and emergence of cultural realms, examine the major cultural realms of the world. The culture has 5 different components which relates. 1. The cultural traits. A culture trait is a learned system of beliefs, values, traditions, symbols and meanings that are passed from one generation to another within a specific community of people. Culture traits identify and coalesce a community because traits express the cohesiveness of the group. There are 7 primary cultural traits: learned behavior, transmission of information, symbolism, flexibility, integration, ethnocentrism and adaptation. People acquire cultural traits as they grow up in environments surrounded by others with similar ideas and concepts. Cultural traits are part of the larger system of culture that includes a network of behaviors, values, beliefs and norms. Second one, the cultural complex. Cultural complex is a combination of different cultural traits in distinctive ways. Common values, beliefs, behaviors and artifacts that make one place distinct. According to Hubel, cultural complexions are nothing but larger clusters of traits organized about some nuclear point of reference. Cultural traits, as we know, do not usually appear singly or independently. Third one, cultural system. Cultural system is a group of interconnected cultural complexes. It is an area with strong cultural ties that bind its people. Coming to fourth one, cultural region. A cultural region is a portion of Earth's surface that has common cultural element and has distinct cultural authority from other regions. Culture regions, like cultures themselves, display considerable variety. For starters, any number of cultural components may be used to define culture regions. Coming to the fifth one and the main one, the cultural realms. A cultural realm is a geographical region where cultural traits maintain homogeneity. The cultural traits are supposed to be the product of regional geographical circumstances. It is thus regional geography which has become the basis of the delineation of cultural realms in the world. Ratzel's concept of cultural landscape provided encouragement to the geographers for cultural regionalization. Blash and Spencer are other geographers who have considered the study of cultural realms as an important part of human geography. Apart from the geographers, historians, anthropologists and sociologists have also tried to regionalize the world into cultural realms. The variables of culture include the economic organization, social customs, traditional values, dietary habits, dress patterns, language and uniformity in physical characteristics. On the basis of these variables, various cultural realms can be identified. Brock-Webb tried to establish the dominance of a particular phenomenon over the evolution of cultural landscape. He found that the impact of religious values is tremendous over the entire cultural system. All over the world, human beliefs, day-to-day activities and even dress patterns, food habits and social values are influenced by religious messages. To many geographers, religious messages are also influenced by regional geography. A cultural religious investigation reveals that the culture of a world into 4 major and 2 minor cultural realms. The major cultural realms are Occidental realm, Islamic realm, Indian realm, East Indian realm and the minor cultural realms are Southeast Asian realm, Meso-African or Negro-African realm. Particular region becomes ineffective once the religious impact is withdrawn. The impact of each cultural center through diffusion extend over a wide range of territory will stop within this wider geographical region. The cultural system matured from the stimulus of a cultural earth. At least 4 primary and 2 minor cultural hearths in the old world were the centers of civilization. From these 3 primary cultures, realms matured such as the Mediterranean, the Indian and the Chinese. The evolutionary translation of cultural elements from Mesopotamia, that is Iraq, Egypt, Crete and the eastern shores of Mediterranean into Greek culture created a new cultural system. This system spread throughout the Mediterranean basin and back into Southwest Asia. Territorial expansion of the Vedic pastoral immigrants eastwards and southward was combined with the gradual absorption of Indus culture first and peninsular Indian culture somewhat later. The eventual spread of Indus wave culture southward to Sri Lanka and then eastward around the shores of Southeast Asia to Indonesia broadened its regional impact. The Chinese cultural system was more unified and specific. Its southward expansion was more aggressive and also exerted its influence northeastward into southern Manchuria and Korea and little later to the Japanese islands. Not the westward and westward spread of its culture was restricted. The long-term advancement of human culture has been a continuous struggle to find ways in which to utilize the many kinds of resources present in the earthly environment. The modern new world has shared in the benefits of old world culture system. There are 2 primary centers of new world culture hearths. They are Mesoamerican and Peruvian or Andean. Mesoamerican influences were felt chiefly to the north, with cultural diffusion extending as far as southwest and the eastern woodlands of present United States of America. The Peruvian or Andean culture has spread outward from the center both southward and northward along the Andean highlands. The history of cultural diffusion marked a few secondary old world culture hearths like the African Sudan, the Arabian and Persian diffusion of Islam and the Mongolian. Similarly, the cultural development of northwestern Europe was attributed to the following factors such as the great early migration of ethnic groups, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the formation of nation states, the role played by the North Italian merchants during the Middle Ages and the beginning of the agricultural revolution. The Celtic in the west, Germanic in the north central zone and the Slavic in the east differentiated themselves by languages. The European explorations became the agent of cultural diffusion. This cultural diffusion was on a grand scale. European contacts became worldwide. They were aggressive in their contacts and they became permanent agents of diffusion due to their colonization. Thus, the creation and expansion of culture systems and the spread of their complexes have resulted in originally varied patterns. It is therefore necessary to demarcate the cultural region or realm and to trace the understanding common cultural traits within this cultural realm. A group of people have characteristics like speaking the same or kindred languages, practicing the same religion, observing similar manners and customs, engaged in similar type of works and living in similar types of community groups. The term cultural realm signifies a large area where fundamental unity in composition, arrangement and integration of significant traits distinguishes it cultural from other regions. Cultures are in constant change and their realms expand and contract. The consensus of various geographers are the major cultural realms suggests the basic validity of their schemes. While agreeing with the broad segments, two groups of cultural realms were distinguished in the 15th century. A. Major cultural realms, that is civilizations. First one, Occidental, the Western or European. Second one, main Islamic or the North African, Southwest Asian, Arab Persian. Third one, Indic, the Indian or the Hindu. Fourth one, East Asian, Semitic. Under minor realms, we have fifth one, that is Southeast Asian. Sixth one, Meso-African or Negro Africa, and seventh one, Southern Pacific. So, coming to Occidental culture realm, in the late Middle Ages, Mediterranean Europe was the nucleus of Occidental culture. From 1600 onwards, Northwestern Europe became the veritable dynamo of Occident. The diffusion of Occidental culture over the world since 1600 was largely due to the spread of ideas and things which originated in Northwest Europe. The vast domain of United States with its rich resources and its common market offered great economic opportunities. In Canada, with the exception of Quebec, the British tradition remains stronger than in the United States. The Occidental intrusions have deeply disturbed the native way of life. Most of the Canada lies on the periphery of Occidental culture, an indefinite area between the old which is going and the new which is reluctant to take hold. Australia offers interesting similarities and contrasts to Canada. In South Africa, an offshoot of Western culture faces point blank on its borders and in its midst the rising consciousness of black Africans, the vast majority practically unassimilated. In comparison to Australia and South Africa, New Zealand is most idyllic. Inland from maritime Europe lies the shattered built of Central Europe. It has been the meeting ground of Slavic and Germany people of Eastern and Western Christendom. Coming to Islamic realm, in Germany it is called the Orient, a term the English formerly used, but now commonly reserved for East Asia. Direction, although less than half of Muslims live in the vast realm, the prevalence of Islam is its chief cultural feature and suggests the name Islamic realm. The entire zone extends from Morocco to Pakistan. In Africa, the southern boundary of the realm runs through the zone where Islam impinges upon the religion of Meso-Africa. Since 1973, the role of oil-rich countries in the Middle East has changed significantly. Coming to the Indic realm, mountain walls and ocean shores make Indian subcontinent a distinct physical unit. Religion is doubtless a major force in Indian culture. The problems of present day India are in many ways similar to those of underdeveloped countries. It has the advantage of a long tradition of civilization and of political unity over the vast areas. The East Asian cultural realm. This is the area of Chinese civilization with its variants in Korea and Japan. The vast deserts, high plateaus and rugged mountains of Central Asia have shielded it more than any other cultural realm. While Chinese influence in Japan and Korea has been substantial, these two countries must not be considered mere transplant of Semitic civilization. The Southeast Asian cultural realm. Southeast Asia includes the Asian mainland east of India and south of China, as well as the entire archipelago. Predominant race in South Mongoloid and thus more related to the peoples of East than the South Asia. It is an area of transit and transition where different cultures meet and mingle. Its personality is defined as neither East Asian nor Indic, neither Islamic or Occidental, yet containing elements of all. All the countries of Southeast Asia for at least the last 2000 years have been culturally a low pressure area. As such, they have been recipients rather than donors of culture. Coming to the Meso-African cultural realm, many scattered peripheral cultures survive. American, Indians, Melanesians, Polynesians, Arctic peoples and others, but Negroid of Africa are different, not only because it is such a large unit, but also because it has preserved its identity to a much larger degree than most. Practically cut off from old world regions in ancient and medieval times, it did not share in the development of new thought and technology. Islam is strong in the coastal towns. The direct impact of the European was limited along the Guinea coast. The economic basis of Meso-African culture consisted of crop farming on shifting fields and of raising cattle, sheep and goats. Meso-African had any mystic religions and no system of writing. Geographers recognize various types of regions, example structural, climate and natural. During more recent year, greater attention has been paid to the concept of cultural region. This kind of region is one that is distinguished not by the physical conditions of the environment, though these may have the same bearing upon its characteristic features, but rather by distinguishing set of cultural traits, distinct language, beliefs, customs, mode of behavior, social institution, way of life, artifacts, etc. The sum of total of these things are closely connected with man as an individual and men as a group. Now, coming to the factors of identification of cultural realms. Immediate cultural region or realm to be acceptable must satisfy two conditions. First one, there must be some aspect of its culture which pervades the area and such a combination of cultural features common to the area that it may be recognized as an entity. Second one, there must be fairly strong differentiated cultural features between it and neighboring areas to justify its recognition and to allow its boundaries to be demarcated. So, the term cultural region implies an area of relative cultural uniformity rather than one of absolute uniformity. The cultural realms, although geographers differ slightly with regard to the number of separate rooms they distinguished, there is a fair measure of agreement over this and also over the boundaries of cultural realms. So, here we have again divided into broad based realms based on the regionalization. So, coming to first one, the polar realm. This high latitude world of perpetual snow and ice, tundra and the northern margins of the taiga. Tribes of Mongoloid origins made their way into these polar lands at an early date. They developed a simple economy based very largely upon the exploitation of animal life. They become either hunters and fishers or herders, basically reindeers. Agriculture was precluded because of the severity of the climatic conditions. natural resources were extremely scarce and the most possible use had to be made of animal products for hide, bones, etc. Coming to the other one, the European realm. Civilization or Western culture spring from a Greco-Roman Christian base, and Europeans generally have been aggressive and progressive. Although there are ethnic differences distinguishable as Alpine, Nordic and Mediterranean types, and there is great linguistic diversity, most Europeans nominally Christians. Highly developed field agriculture of the mixed farming type, industrialization and technological development, urbanization and social mobility, a high degree of occupational specialization and rare artistic, musical and literary creativity outstanding. Europe has been important and democracy, nationalism and communism, and the European realm is distinguished by its acute political fragmentation. Coming to Anglo-American realms, the cultural characteristics of North America, north of Rio Grande and fundamentally derived from Europe, but mostly they seem to have become overemphasized. The prolific richness of resources and the spaciousness of the environment have had a great impact upon the people. Canada and US were originally colonized by the British and the French, but during the 19th and 20th century, large numbers of Irish, Italian, Central Europeans migrated to North America. Although multinational in origin, the various groups in this soon became assimilated, and their allegiance to the land that had welcomed them soon became firmly established. Assimilation in Canada was less effective, and the separatist movement of the French Canadians have preserved their identity. However, the British influence is paramount, as the very term Anglo-American suggests. Capitalism, industrialism and urbanism have reached their peak. The economic exploitation of resources has been ruthless. Farming and manufacture are highly mechanized and often automated. Output from soil and mine, factory is prodigious, and the result is the highest standard of living in the world. Coming to the Latin American realm, whereas the English language and institution have molded the predominant culture patterns in Anglo-American realm, Iberian tongues and institutions have been dominant in Latin America will stop. The Roman Catholic Church is still strongly entrenched, and many cultural features associated with the land holding and law have been imported from the Mediterranean Europe and still prevail. Mediterranean architectural forms are common in many villages and small towns, but in the larger cities American influence is strong. Native Indian cultural influence is artistic design are apparent in many areas in the region. Ethnic diversity, but with a mark, the degree of ethnic fusion is also characteristic. Coming to the next one, the dry realm, running publicly across the heart of the old world land mass, is an extended to belt of arid and semi-arid climate, which has given rise to desert and semi-arid grassland. This dry world has formed a significant barrier and divides the people of the cultural realms on the either side of it. Moreover, it has developed a cultural distinctiveness and unity of its own. Formerly, most of the people were typically nomadic and largely dependent upon herding. Although where plentiful water was supplied by rivers and wells, sedentary agriculture was practiced, cultivation was more or less restricted. The oasis type of settlements, historically the carrying on of trade was closely associated with herding and caravan routes linking the oasis villages and towns. Society, largely tribally organized and nomadic and mainly Muslims, made the dry world a relatively homogeneous cultural region. Although two wings, the Arab border wing in the west and through the Mongolian wing in the east, were traditionally recognized. Ethnically and linguistically, there is no greater homogeneity, rather a great diversity, but the Islamic faith, if not common to the whole realm, is widely spread and is strong cementing factor. The discovery and exploitation of rich oil deposits came up particularly in the Middle East, but also in North Africa, has radically altered the economy of many of the hither to poverty stricken countries. In many of these oil rich countries, example Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf, Sheikdoms, Iran and Iraq, rapid transformations are taking place, although it is still true to say that the wealth and influence lies in the hands of the few, while the many remain relatively underprivileged. The vast wealth accruing from oil revenues is making it possible for some countries to modernize and to develop their economies. The Australian New Zealand realm. The Australian New Zealand realm, where it is not for its physical separatist, this area would not be distinguished as a separate realm. It is really likely Anglo American, an offshoot from Europe and part of the great Occidental realm. Sometimes it is included in the Pacific realm, but this is not very satisfactory. What distinguishes the Australia and New Zealand realm from its neighbors is its European and more particularly its British derived culture. The Aboriginal people of both Australia and New Zealand were too few in number to have exerted more than the slightest influence upon the European incomers. Coming to the Pacific realm, the island world of South Pacific may be regarded as a separate cultural realm, but three subregions are usually distinguished from Melanesia, Micronesia and Polynesia. The population of the realm is only just 5 million, but the area has cultural diversity as varied as any other in the world. Some of the most important primitive people on the face of the earth inhabit these islands, yet their cultural development was unique in many ways. Their maternal wealth was small and they possessed few cultural heritages that developed among themselves some of the most original social organization known to the modern world. Coming to the communist realm, East Europe and the great part of Russia are culturally akin to many ways to Western Europe. On the other hand, there a share in the countries of Eastern Europe, some claim to be considered as a separate cultural region because of their distinctive economic and political organization. Communism, based on the teachings of Karl Marx, supplied the basis for social and economic organization. Capitalism and democracy of the liberal kind developed in Western Europe. Coming to the African realm, major ethnic, linguistic and religious boundaries, which also roughly coincide with the boundary between the desert and the savanna, separate the dry realm from the African realm. The latter is the end of the, although in the southern parts many white men have settled and made it their homeland, but always the whites formed many little groups in the population. Measured by European standards, most African culture is relatively primitive. Although one or two is fairly widespread, there is a sufficient linguistic diversity within the region to make intertribal communication difficult. Furthermore, cover the fail to develop written languages to stop them. Building has always been simple and advanced. Structural forms rarely materialized. Their technological development was limited. Economic development of US and for the matter still remains the simplest too. Cultures are in constant change. A specific territory inhabited by a population following a particular culture system forming a cultural realm represents localized part of the larger geographical area. Their realms expand and contract. The history of the occupation of the earth by mankind therefore embodies a triple time variable that is physical, biotic, environment time, cultural and human time. The state of affairs in any single region of the earth today is a composite of these three variables. The continuous changing phases cause the cultural realms again and again to be remodeled, reallocated and distinguished within a different frame. There is equal opportunity for the emergence of a new cultural system.